Hello. Well, I'll be happy to explain all about me. Me. My name's Professor Tinkerputt. You may think it's funny, but I like it very much. I moved right here and climbed the stage to build my toys. And by the way, these toys are mine, so please don't touch.
Hello, history friends. Welcome back to the Spots of Love podcast. I am your host, of course, Karan. Today we have the wonderful, amazing Barry Pearl, also known as Professor Tinkerputt, here joining us today. Barry, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm great. Thank you for having me. This is such an honor. It's rather terrific what it is that you guys are doing. I'm rather impressed.
It's just always an honor for us because growing up, you never think that you would have an opportunity to talk to people who are instrumental in your lives as children growing up. And everyone that we've talked to involving Barney has always been so welcoming and open to the fan community in a way that I don't know a lot of other franchises have been with their fan bases. So it's always an honor for us as well to be able to just talk to you guys and hear what your stories are and just have that moment with you.
Well, it's first of all, it's a phenomenon. And
yes,
as is Greece, which you're probably aware of, that I was also honored and blessed to be a part of. And I've said this to Greece fans when we meet them at autograph signing events, that it's you guys that keep us relevant. If it wasn't for you, because it doesn't, none of this happens in a vacuum. It's, is the word symbiotic? Is it, we need you, you need us to fulfill our needs and our wants and, what's inside of our collective heart. So, it works hand in hand. So we are so aware of and blessed and thankful for the fans. We also are fans of ... So
absolutely.
Growing up, I would have loved to have met George Reeves, who played Superman.
Oh, yeah.
He's a huge hero of mine. And now, well, certainly with technology and media the way it is, it makes it possible. I mean, look what we're doing right now, for instance.
For sure.
But if you're going to conventions and meeting our idols, it's devoutly to be wished.
Absolutely. Here on our podcast, we usually start with the introduction to Barney for most people. But for yourself, you were an actor before that. So I would like to start for you. What was your journey like? How did you get into acting, or what drew you into wanting to be an actor, be on screen and do those kind of things?
So I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and I was an only child. Parents had been separated and ultimately divorced when I was a year old. So I had my mother and my three aunts and my grandmother raising me. I was, like I say, an only child. So I had, all these women supporting me and loving me.
Yes.
And there's a lot of music that also was played in the household. And I think, that and watching television. I loved the Popeye cartoons. I loved the Three Stooges. I loved Laurel and Hardy. I loved those teams, Abbott and Costello. Yes. I was always fascinated by, and I think that all of us are influenced very early on by some medium.
Yes.
Whether it be music or art or dance, et cetera, et cetera. And I was a ham. I was always looking for attention, always got it, and always positively reinforced. And my mom had gotten me enrolled in a tap dance class, Miriam Metzer's tap dance class. And at the end of the year, they'd always do a review. And so they put me together with the youngest girl in the class, and they would all often build the reviews around the two of us because we're these adorable kids, tapping.
Yeah.
And I think that was the bug that bit me. The first performances were in front of the audiences at those events at the Millersville State Teachers College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And my mom saw the spark. My aunt saw the spark. And they continued to encourage it. I got involved in a community theater, the Lancaster Little Theater, and did a couple of plays with that company. And then in 1959, I did a production of Dark at the Top of the Stairs at the Fulton Theater. It used to be called the Opera House. It's one of the oldest theaters in the country. And I did a production that this fellow who was an aspiring playwright from New York was jobbed into to run the lights because, aspiring artists need to pay the rent in some way, shape, or form. So he took a liking to my mother and myself, a guy by the name of Chuck Miller, Charles E. Miller. And he said to my mom, one of these days we'll get your son on Broadway. And 2 years later, he was friendly with the secretary of the person who produced Bye Bye Birdie, the first rock musical you think about. And they were looking to replace the young boy that played the role of Randolph McAfee, a fellow named Johnny Borden, who was leaving to do another play, a musical called Milk and Honey.
Yeah.
And we were looking for a replacement. And Chuck said to his friend Bob Fagan, the secretary of Edward Padula, the man that produced Birdie, I think I got the kid for you. Now, in the meantime, they were auditioning a whole bunch of boys for the roles. And other characters too, because they were about to go out on the road. They were going to finish up a month on Broadway and then take it on the first national tour. So Chuck called my mom, and the next thing you know, I'm on a train into New York, and Chuck coached me in how to sing "There's No Business Like Show Business," and I went into audition for Marge and Gower Champion. Gower had directed Birdie, and amongst a lot of other things, he and Marge were a famous dance duo back in the day. And I got the gig and went to work immediately. Yeah, so that was in 61, late August of 61. I became a member of the Actors Equity Association on September 1st, 1961. And that began the career, Karan. That was it. And was enrolled in professional children's school, which was a school that catered to kids that were in the business or whose parents were and traveled with the kids. So I had a tutor, et cetera. And did that and came back off the road and did the Vegas company of Birdie in 62. And then in the fall of 62, I auditioned for a replacement in the pre-Broadway production of Oliver. I'd auditioned for it earlier, but had a broken arm. I fell off my cousin's Shetland pony and broke my arm.
Oh, no.
Into the gig immediately. Later on, they replaced two kids, and I was one of the kids that replaced pre-Broadway, and then came into Broadway with Oliver in 1963, January 63. And then, the rest, as they say, is history. I continued to work through my childhood and graduated and went to Carnegie Mellon University to get my Bachelor of Fine Arts. And still during the summers, I would continue to work. And when I graduated, I continued even still. And that eventually brought me to 1994. And there's a lot of stuff between graduating in 73 and 94, but that brought me to the Barney world. And that was, I guess, post Grease, obviously. Grease happened in between. And so that's kind of in a large nutshell how I came to be in the business.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a great story, a great start. I love hearing about the introduction for people into the careers that they love and enjoy, because for listeners especially, it shows you that everyone has to go through this journey. It doesn't just happen for people. There's work that has to be done, and you have to be dedicated. And there's a lot of nights where it maybe isn't working the way that you think it's supposed to, and you just have to stay with it. And it's always great to hear those stories to put in perspective. Everybody, even the greatest of people have to go through a journey and figure it out before they finally get there.
It's a job.
Yeah,
A good job
absolutely.
that we happen to love doing. And yes, there are times where, maybe your energy is low, or
Hmm.
you didn't get a great night's sleep or whatever. You still have a responsibility to do your job.
Yeah,
So it's very much work. And
for
again,
sure.
as I say, it's work that we happen to be blessed to love doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned it before. Barney was this phenomenon, as was Grease, which is a huge film that came before your time with Barney. Talking about Grease for a second, what was it like filming that movie? And at that time, did you guys know it was going to be, or did you have this feeling or anything that it was going to be this cultural classic that people would love for years and years and years after the fact?
A wonderful question that we've been asked time and time again, and it
Hmm.
seems to be one that people want the answer to, because it would be great to say, "Oh, yeah, I have that crystal ball. I knew right away." But no,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
nobody has that. I mean, we have. Listen, the play, the stage musical, which came before the film, it was a
Hmm.
big success. It was at one time the longest running musical in Broadway history.
Yeah.
Um, and so we knew that going in that we had great product, but that doesn't always translate.
Right.
You know, it did for, in my opinion, West Side Story. It did for
Hmm.
Sound of Music. It did for Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh
There
yeah.
were others that it didn't work so well for, like Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah.
In my opinion, Chorus Line didn't work as well as it did on stage because it was very much a stage experience. But in
Mhm.
any event, with Grease, we kind of had the idea that that again we had something good to start out with, a good basis,
Yeah.
a good foundation. Um, but it changed up a lot. The story changed up. A bunch of the songs changed. So we didn't know. And quite honestly, when it first hit the silver screen, it wasn't the huge success that it has become,
Hmm.
since. I think after
Yeah.
like the 10th year anniversary, we thought, oh, this is going to continue on here.
Hmm.
Why? The universal story: boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl. The music, the dance, the gorgeous faces of John and Olivia, may she rest in peace, and the
Yes.
others who've left us, and most recently Susan Buckner, who played Patty Simcox. Especially with John and Olivia, the camera loves
Sure.
them, and so that certainly helps. And they're just exceedingly talented individuals. And I'd like to think that the cast is equally as talented.
Yeah.
So we were able to execute the material with great aplomb, and I think that at the core of it all, in my opinion, um, the audience loves to see the camaraderie.
Oh,
All
sure.
guys getting along, guys and gals getting along. We
Yeah.
go together. That song embodies just that.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the appeal. Maybe, and again, as I suggest, those people who are the lay people that aren't in the business, maybe they know that they like it, but they can't necessarily articulate it.
Hmm.
So I think that at the core of it, it's gosh, we love to see those gals and guys getting along the way they do.
For
So
sure.
yeah, so we didn't know that it was going to be what it was. That it has become that, we are so honored and blessed, each and every one of us. And
Yeah.
we together often, especially to do these autograph signing events, and we talk about it all the time. How much we in real life love each other. So that continues to manifest.
That's awesome. Yeah. The community that all of you had when filming those things, same as with Barney, it translated onto the screen, which I think absolutely just helps it continue to be that success for so many years after the fact.
Oh yeah, and I will tell you, for the longest time, and I kind of still do. Um, Shooting Imagination Island in Texas was one of the best times I've ever had before a camera.
Wow.
I mean, the crew, the cast, the creatives, they were so welcoming and so loving.
Yeah.
It was just a terrific time. And believe me, I had some wonderful theatrical experiences. And Barney is way up there.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm sitting in a house that Barney built.
Yeah.
Wasn't for
Yeah.
Barney, because I went out. A lot of us went out, as did Carrie, and Josh, and a whole bunch of us.
Mhm.
We went out on a 2.5-year national and international tour with Barney's Big Surprise.
Absolutely.
That allowed for the possibility to buy a house, quite honestly.
That's amazing.
At the age of 48, I was finally able to buy a house.
Wow.
And I'm so thankful for that. It's certainly been a struggle keeping the house because it can be a money pit sometimes. But,
Oh, sure.
what I'm saying? But again, another blessing. I'm so thankful to the Leach organization for bringing me into the fold.
That's amazing. It's cool to hear you say the house that Barney built. I think you've said that before. And David Joyner.
I was going to say, I got it from David. I got it from David.
Yeah.
I got it from David. You're the first person that's pointed that out. I remember going into his house. He showed me his house for the first time. I was astounded. And he says, "Here's the house that Barney built." Well, same here, guy. I mean, I think he actually had his built, but it had been built in 51. So, but still, never.
But yeah, it's still the same. It's actually kind of cool because I was down in Texas in March and I visited some of the Barney crew, and I visited Jess Nelson, who was the art director for a while. And his house, he says the exact same thing. That house that he's in with his wife, Carol, was possible because of working on Barney.
That's great.
So I think that might be the story for a lot of people, and that's just something even greater about working on a production like that, aside from just the fun and the love and the experience that you have, is you get to have a place that you can live, that's your own, and the work that you did there made that possible.
That's right.
Which is awesome. Let's jump into Barney. You joined Barney for the first time with Imagination Island in '94. How did you get the role of Professor Tinkerputt? How did that come about for you?
Well, it's funny. My agent, David Moss, at the time, had said, "I'm going to send you up on an industrial." Called it an industrial. Oh, really? What? Okay. All right. That an industrial is like a large commercial that an industry does. Okay. So I went and auditioned for a casting director named Mike Lean, and went in there and saw that all right, Professor Tinkerputt. Okay. And they put me on tape, and I did my thing. I may have had a call back. I don't actually recall. It's oftentimes they'll do that. The client takes a look at the videotape. It was videotape back then, VHS, or maybe it was 3/4-inch tape. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And they liked it, and I probably auditioned a second time and got the gig. And then I realized, oh, that's what it is. Wow, who knew? And it became I had no clue it was for Barney initially.
Wow.
I don't know really when I found out it was from for Barney. It might have been the callback, or might have been there. I don't recall.
Interesting.
The next I'm down at the studios Las Colinas in Dallas, and here I am. And we just had a grand time. And 2 years later, I get a call from Sloan Coleman saying that my agent got the call that they want to do a live show and they want me in the mix.
Wow.
Cool. And then
that's awesome.
that was Barney's Big Surprise. I remember it was J.C. Penney that was sponsoring the Bedtime with Barney Imagination Island. It was first time that it was seen outside of PBS. It was an NBC primetime special. Yeah. And it led to them wanting me into the live mix.
That's amazing. For that audition, if you remember, was the name Tinkerputt or like already in place? Did you have any character input for the character, or was it already
I did eventually? I did eventually, but the name was Tinkerputt, Professor Erasmus Q. Tinkerputt. Nice. Gave a description as I guess an eccentric toy maker. Again, I don't know what the description was, but then when you start working with the material, you're bringing a lot of yourself to it. And there was some improv and that they allowed me to do, and during the rehearsal process, and the creatives, they were just very Jim Rowley. Oh, what a delicious individual he is as director, and Miss Penny, may she rest in peace. Yeah. They just were so collaborative, and they allowed me to bring some ideas to it, and I took their ideas and worked them into mine, and it was just a wonderful, coming together of again, it's a collaboration. This wonderful collaboration, and what you
Yeah,
see is what you got from that.
for sure. That's awesome. And I know you've said that when you did the audition, initially you had no idea that it was for Barney. When you
No.
found out that, had you had any kind of, were you familiar at all with the Barney franchise before you
Yes.
got in there?
Yes, I remember I was working in Pennsylvania, summer stock, and my girlfriend at the time, she wasn't a Barney fan. And
Uh-huh.
I had this image of us driving in a car. Somebody else was driving, or maybe I was driving, and slamming this culture, this Barney culture, and
Oh, wow.
the kind of not really knowing what it was, but it's a kid show, but then once you get exposed to it, you
Mhm.
realize it wasn't for the adults. It was totally
Yeah,
geared for the kids. And how can you slam "I love you, you love me" and the ethics, the messages, and the ethics that it's teaching kids? Yeah, because it's annoying because your kid wants to watch it over and over and over again because they are that taken by
mhm.
their senses are so wonderfully assaulted by this huge purple dinosaur that is
Yeah,
spreading love in the. How can you not? And so, I let the opinions just roll off my back. I know full well what it was about. I was way
for sure.
deep inside it, and we're performing to 6,000 screaming kids
Yeah,
2 3 times a day who are just on top of the world. That's why they're screaming, because they're loving it so much.
for
How
sure.
can you time it? Look, the hours were early. Okay, I prefer to work at night, but it is what it is, and we worked hard. Not only did we work hard, but the crew.
Oh, yeah.
Is off to the crew. My gosh, those were the unsung heroes.
Yeah,
Of that experience. They worked really, really hard, and
absolutely.
yeah, and so I just, again, blessed to have been a part of the whole operation.
Yeah, talking about a live stage show like that, obviously the cast and the people who are on the stage selling that show to the audience is amazing, and you can't do it without them. But as well as the crew, especially with Barney and those guys, they bless them for what they did, especially in the '90s. I don't know if there's ever been a children's show that has done a tour to that magnitude since Barney or before Barney. Like that, it was really like a rock show for preschool kids.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you had the Wiggles, and
Hmm.
uh, I don't know if the Turtles went out on a live show, but the Ninja Turtles, but certainly the Wiggles,
Yeah,
and Sesame Street.
Sesame Street.
Yeah, that was around at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, but and then Barney had done, I guess, solo concerts at one point. Maybe he
Hmm.
did them with Baby Bop and BJ as well. But of course, this show, the Barney's Big Surprise, had a lot of live characters: Mother Goose and King Cole,
Oh
and
yeah,
robots, etc., etc. So it was big. In fact, our crew was a rock and roll crew. They had worked
yeah.
with AC/DC, Metallica, the Stones, and Jake Berry, who was in charge of the whole operation.
Wow,
Um, he brought those guys and gals in, and they were just miraculous what they did.
wow. That's amazing. What is your doing the tour, or even for Imagination Island? What was your most? Do you have a most favorite part of that whole experience of playing Tinkerputt?
Well, certainly in the as I mentioned, in Imagination Island, uh, being able to rehearse something to perfection and then solidifying it on screen. I would
Hmm.
almost say, it's funny because I've said oft times that I'm not real pleased with sitting back and watching myself. There's most of it is cringeworthy to me.
Hmm.
I gotta say, in reflecting now, I don't think there's anything about my work in Barney that actually turns me off. And I
Oh,
don't want that to sound like, I'm holier than thou, but
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff in Greece where I went, oh, I don't like that take. I don't like that look. Oh, why did they choose the? Oh,
sure.
that's the moment, right? But but with Imagination Island, I think that everything about what I did, I'm satisfied with. Just
awesome.
that whole experience, like I mentioned, was terrific. On the road and doing it live and in person, there are so many other variables. I will be honest with you and say that initially, these rock and roll crews who work with, for instance, the Stones, they're working for the Stones. The CEO of the Stones tour are the Stones. So the crew is sort of beholden to them. So now you got this rock and roll crew that are busting their collective butt, putting this show up and taking this show down, working hard hours, lugging and driving and such.
Oh yeah.
See these performers, in my case, step on stage for 15 minutes out of the hour and a half or two, take home a nice paycheck, and do just that, sing and dance. So yeah, try these lights and the scaffolding, yada, yada, yada. And so there was a little oil and water, if you will, initially between crew and cast.
Oh, sure.
And I understood it. I have always prided myself on having a great relationship with the crew, with crews, all the crews that I've worked with in beyond the apron and backstage. A great respect for them. So I come with that. And it was tough for me because I'm all of a sudden being judged, I felt like I don't appreciate their work. And I so did and do. It really wasn't until some of us started to party with them.
Oh, sure.
Hey, Barry's okay.
And,
and I was able to express my heart to them at that point. But it took a while. It really took a while. And then we just all adored each other after that. But I found myself mostly the cast hung out with themselves. They didn't hang out as much with Josh Martin, for instance. He was a great liaison.
Bounce between, yeah.
I mean, amazing. So, and Carrie too, because they're working so heavily with the crew during the course of the show, in and out of the costume. Something goes awry, So his handlers, his wranglers, they were tighter with regard to that. I didn't so much deal with crew. I didn't have any fast changes to deal with, et cetera, et cetera. So we were a bit removed in that way, but that got worked around, worked through, and then we ended up, famous friends, all of us.
Oh yeah.
So it was a hard gig because, like I say, sometimes the travel was tough. After a while, we traveled in 2 hours, and that was in a bus that you couldn't go to the bathroom in except to urinate, but you couldn't defecate. You couldn't. Had to stop.
Yeah.
They had to stop, and I had to go in the woods at one point in time. So it was a little inconvenient.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was the middle of the night, and you can't go to the bathroom in their toilets. Had to do with the offloading that stuff.
Of course.
There was a reason. They weren't just trying to butcher us. There was good reason for that. But it was a job. It was tough. And just that, but you got through it. We are better people for it.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. I love that you said you performing as Tinkerputt might be one of the only times that it's not off-putting to you to watch yourself or your performance with Barney. I think that's cool because I'm also an actor myself, and I've done theater and I have my own TV show now because of growing up with Barney and watching people like you on that show. But almost all creatives, especially singers or actors, they have that kind of drawback with themselves of, I don't want to hear myself, I don't like to see my performance, I just do it and then move on. So it's always good when you do get that one where it's like, I actually can at least enjoy this to a point where I'm not just critiquing everything that I could have done differently or better during that. Yeah. How long has it been since you've seen the video like Imagination Island or Big Surprise?
A long time. Much longer than seeing Grease, because we go out on these tours and oftentimes they'll watch a little piece of it and go have dinner, come back, or we've sat through. I've probably seen that film more than any film in my life.
Oh sure.
And And so, but I haven't sat down to watch Barney or The Big Surprise in a long time. I see little clips of it every once in a while, but Imagination Island specifically, but not so much Big Surprise. It's a good question. I've never been asked that before, and I come to thinking, maybe I'll sit down and watch it now.
Yeah, check it out here and there. Another thing that we ask usually with cast and crew, the Bob Wests and those guys of the Barney world, is they didn't really know, just like you said with Grease, how big of a deal Barney was in the public until they stepped out and did. For them, the first one was Radio City Music Hall, and hearing the roar of the audience. For you said you knew of Barney by the time you did Imagination Island, but you still were at that point just in a studio. There wasn't 6,000 fans.
Right.
Do you remember what that experience was like, stepping on stage the very first time and hearing and seeing those fans sing along to the Tinkerputt song or Mr. Knickerbocker with you, or those kind of things?
I think that it wasn't a huge shift for me in any way. I think I took it fairly in stride. And why would I have done that? Maybe because I was so used at the time to performing live to big crowds, to big. When I was, I guess, 16, 17 years old, I did a production of Oliver at the Kansas City Starlight Theater, an open air theater, thousands of people, and then at the St. Louis Muni Opera, that's the largest. That's the grandfather of all open air theaters, like 15 to 18,000 people. And though I directed Oliver there, or co-directed it there, but I don't think I stepped on stage to perform at the Muni. So there was just something about performing in front of large crowds that I'd done before. So I wasn't overwhelmed by it. But that is not in any way to diminish the joy of doing that in front of all playing Simon Says, for instance, which I had like 10 minutes or whatever to play Simon Says while they were changing sets in the back.
Wow.
I came out on the thrust stage, and I had the attention of all those kids playing Simon Says. What amazing power that is.
Oh, yeah.
I really appreciated doing that, and that was a lot of improv that I was able to incorporate. So I really dug it. It didn't frighten me. It pleased me, as I recall. But there wasn't. I can't pin any one moment down where I said, "Wow, I'm here." I've also been on the stage at the Hollywood Bowl, where the Beatles performed, and that was to do a Grease sing-along, the sing-along version. We did a little pre-show before that, and that was pretty awesome. The Hollywood Bowl. But again, I sort of take it all in stride too, and again, not to diminish the wonderfulness of it all, but it's just kind of right foot, left foot. Okay, here I am now doing this. This is pretty darn cool, and then moving on.
Definitely. Absolutely. Your costume for Professor Tinkerputt, did you have any input with that costume, or do you have the costume? Were you able to keep it or anything like that?
I actually was going to bring these out of the closet, and I didn't. I have the red sneakers. I have the Argyle socks. I've got the bow tie. I've got the glasses.
Amazing.
Did I have I don't think I had the pants or the shirt, nor did I have the bib, the apron. But I did. I mean, the socks. What are they going to do with the socks and the shoe? I got the shoes. I was tempted to bring those out, but I thought I got some other things for you. But that would have been cool. So yes, I have. Yeah. Did I have any input? I don't know if I did. I will say I did have input in the hair. We tested a lot of different ways to do the hair, and finally we came up with this, makeup came up with this stuff called gaffquat, which is like sap that is able to form, and have it stay in place. And then it simply comes out with water, which was great. Dissolved with water and shampoo. Gaffquat, Gaffquat, I think it is.
Interesting.
Something like that. And again, like I say, it's like tree sap going in, but then it comes right off with water. So I had some input there, as I recall. because we did a lot of testing with it. And I'm not certain. I know I tried on a different kinds of costumes, and maybe I might have said, I think it was Deborah Halfling, who was costume designer at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Say, yeah, that's good. Let's do. Let's try it. So that might have happened. I don't have a firm recollection of it though.
That's awesome. I have to say, as a kid, I was 1 year old when Imagination Island came out, but I remember when I was able, obviously at 1, I don't remember when that show actually premiered because I don't have that memory, but my earliest memory of Imagination Island, my love for bow ties came from seeing Professor Tinkerputt wear it.
That's great.
And in my children's show that I do, it's a educational preschool show for kids here in Omaha, inspired because of Barney. I change bow ties each episode as a tribute to Mr. Rogers for his changing of cardigan, but also part of the costume choice of a bow tie came also again for remembering the love of the bow tie from you wearing it as Tinkerputt that I get to continuously pay homage to every time we do our show. So thank you for that.
That's a gift. Telling me that's a gift is just a simple. Let me read you something. I've read this a bunch of times in different interviews, but I think it's pertinent right now. Underneath my emails that I send, I have a quote by a person named Frederick Bruchner, and it goes like this, and you'll understand this when I read it. The life I touch, for good or ill, will touch another life, and that in turn another, until who knows where the trembling stops or in what far place my touch will be felt. So
that's
you
beautiful.
were, and I was in great part responsible for that touch, unbeknownst to myself. So
absolutely.
These are the things that transcend the paycheck, I always say.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You were just so great as the character. As kids, watching that show, a lot of us didn't know of your history before Barney. So I think it's a tribute to how great you are when it comes to being an actor and becoming those characters that you play, that they become something that stands the test of time. For Tinkerputt with Barney, he only appeared on media twice, right? Imagination Island, or I'm sorry, that's not true. Imagination Island and Big Surprise as far as video goes, but he was one of the only characters from Barney that wasn't a regular character who appeared in things like video games and Barney books.
Well, no, he is in a video game, as I recall. It's CD-ROM.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, and a bunch of Barney books also, which is great for a character who had such a short time on the screen to continuously live through the other media. I think also just speaks to how beloved that character was, that they needed to use it in other forms.
Well, interesting you should bring this up. And I think the reason or that the fact that is the case, that probably the character could have been as popular as Barney. Let's hold that thought for a moment, because there was a moment where they were going to bring Tinkerputt into the television show.
Really?
In fact, they actually, as I recall, they built a treehouse toy shop, or a toy shop that became that became the treehouse. I'm not certain about that aspect, but as I understand it, and I think I might have gotten this from Stephen White, that they felt that it was going to suck more of the attention away from Barney, and that's why they didn't do that. Number one. Number two, we were in the middle of negotiating the second year of the tour when there was a breakdown put out for the CD-ROM. They wanted a Barry Pearl type. And my agent said, well, wait, we got Barry Pearl. But it would have meant that it would have conflicted with me going out on tour for the second year, because the CD-ROM takes a long time. Basically, you're going through the entire dictionary and recording words in order for them to put sentences together, as I understand it.
Gotcha.
I want to say that a late friend of mine. What's his name? Steve Franken? Not
Mhm.
not yeah not the comedian.
Yeah.
So was it? Oh gosh, no, I can't remember his name. Not the senator, not the Democrat senator, whose reputation was besmirched. But
Mhm.
what's his name? He's no longer with us. He was also on a series called Dobie Gillis many years ago.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I'm sorry that I can't
It
remember
was
his.
it was Steve Franken.
It
You were
was.
right with the name. Yes.
Thank you. That they went with him, and then I believe there was there a car, or maybe it wasn't the cartoon or the CD-ROM. The character was more squat. He had more girth.
Yes.
They decided to draw him that way, and that was one of the reasons why they said they want to go with a different voice. Didn't make a whole lot of sense, other than they didn't want to take me away from the producer. Sloan didn't want me to not go out on tour, I guess, for the next year and a half. So
Oh,
I
sure.
missed out on that one. But yes, it does seem, and thank you for that, for telling me that, that in fact the character did have that kind of a life beyond Big Surprise and Imagination Island.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite books that they produced was a Valentine's Day book, and Professor Tinkerputt was in that book, along with the TV show had Stella the Storyteller as well, who was this
Yeah.
character who would show up, and so both of those characters were in that Valentine's Day story, and it was one of my favorite stories as a kid because I loved Stella and I loved Tinkerputt, and then obviously Barney and them were who they were. That was one of my favorite stories, but it was always cool to see you in other things. And it's interesting that you say that they thought that you would be bigger or take attention away from Barney. I think it could have worked just like it did on stage and like it did in videos. They even, in a couple older videos that came in towards the beginning of the 2000s, they mentioned Tinkerputt and showed a painted picture, which it kept. I think that also just attributed to the people who ran the show knowing how special that character was. That I do wish there would have been a bigger opportunity where you could have came along for some of the rides of the TV show. I think it would have worked perfectly. And it comes down to, people like Steve White, who are amazing writers. It just comes down to how the story is written as well. I mean,
True.
it could be written in the right way, that just like those other characters, that Stella that was on the show, you just compliment Barney and the adventures that happen, and you're just as beloved as everyone else. So it's a shame that we missed out on some of those kind of things that I think would have worked so perfectly.
Oh, thank you. That is another gift to hear you say that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for
Wow.
sure.
And were those the books? Were they cartoon characters?
They were. Yep, yeah. They were illustrated. I wish I don't think I have that book anymore. I had it as a kid. I want to find it again. I wish I had it, or else I would show it to you.
I've seen renderings of me as the cartoon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Absolutely.
Such an honor.
Definitely. Do you have, as opposed to other films or theater shows or things that you worked on, was there a challenge that you experienced working on Barney that was different from any other thing that you have worked on?
Well, yeah, I think that the challenge for the live show was making sure that I got my dialogue to line up with Barney's, even though they wrote gain on that, if there was a pause or something but to do it in the fashion where Barney has his recorded line, and then I have mine, and then Barney has his, and then going from the live spoken word into the songs, which were pre-recorded as well, and then lip syncing to them. The lip syncing was easy. We are instinctually, we're capable of matching our own rhythms and such. It just seems to work that way. Doing it for other characters, like looping, when you're looping another person's voice, that can be challenging. But you have instinctual rhythms. So, but nevertheless, I'd never done that before, really. Although we do sing to playback, like in Grease, because it was a musical and a film musical.
Sure.
That was the first time I'd done that kind of thing, but that was also fairly easy. So that was a bit of a challenge. Keeping the energy up and the health up was fortunately, I think the only time I was ever out of the show, I'd gotten the flu when we were in New York with Radio City Music Hall, and David Voss, bless his loving heart, went on for me. I think it was the only time I was actually out of the show, just for one or two of those shows. But no, I think that, it was a fairly easy ride, and then again, it was hard sometimes to get up in the morning and do sometimes 3 shows. Mostly it was 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the travel, when we traveled by plane, that actually was more difficult than the buses.
Really?
Yeah, well, just getting the luggage, and that's why they shifted to buses after that. So in a way, it was much more convenient.
Sure.
But the traveling, it took it out of you. And I found myself exhausted at times, but made me a better person.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I have to ask, do you still like your name very much?
Oh yeah, I do. I do. I mean, I get ribbed by it, Tinkerputt,
Oh, sure.
I think it's a great name. Cute Tinkerputt. There's Stephen for you.
Yep. He was such a wonderful person. It's cool that you mentioned David Voss. I don't think we've ever heard the story that Voss went on stage for you.
Yeah.
But man, people call David Voss the Stan Lee of Barney, because he was the original in the costume, and then he did so many things behind the scenes of choreography and then on stage. So he's truly a talent that deserves a lot of respect. But it's cool that he got to go on stage as Tinkerputt at some point.
He calls me TP, and we always called him Doogie Howser. He looked so young, and still does. He's a delightful human being, and just a loving, wonderful human being. Served our country, he served our country.
Absolutely.
And he was just one of those delicious people. As I mentioned, Rowley he's a delicious person, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. So before we start to wrap it up here, Barry, we usually in our podcast, we like to ask whoever our guest is to bring on a Barney item that they own that maybe is the most dearest to them, or the one they hold the closest to them. Can you show us what it is that you bought or brought with you, and just kind of explain the story behind why you choose that item?
Do you mind if I show you several things?
Oh, no, please. However many you want.
Well, the first one I'm going to show you, I wear every day. And that is one of my 2 Barney watches. Now let me get this up here so it doesn't flare. You can see it there, yeah?
Oh yeah, I can see it.
And I know we all have these. The first one I got was given to me when I did Barney's Imagination Island, and then got a second one when we did Big Surprise.
That's
I guess
cool.
It was for opening night or something. I've changed the band, obviously. It was a leather band, but I wear it always, and it's a great conversation piece. And I'm always changing the battery when it runs down. This is the one that I wear. I mean, I've got a Movado, and I got a Seiko, and I've got but this is the one I wear every day. And then of course we all, I think, were given these at some point. The sweatshirt.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and you see the sweatshirt. And then, of course, for one of my professional photos, if you will, and those that I sometimes bring with me to autograph signings, is this.
Oh, the classic photo.
Yep. And it says there, Barry Pearl is Professor Tinkerputt with Barney and Friends. This is before BJ had a neck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And it's black and white. It's on black and white. But yeah, this is a publicity photo, I guess, that they used. Yeah. And then I forget exactly how I came upon this puppy.
Oh, beautiful.
I think this is Imagination Island, because it was bedtime with Barney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I got that one. So those are in fact, I my wife and I keep this on the bed oft times, You know,
Nice.
now that we have a kitten, we put her on top of our subwoofer sound system in the bedroom. But those are three of several. And like I say, I've got the bow tie and the glasses, a bunch of socks, and the shoes. I also have some foam rubber pins that were not swag. They were sold in Mexico.
Oh, interesting.
Vendors outside the venues that we performed in Mexico. And, they were all ripoffs.
Sure. Yeah.
They were copywritten. Well, there are copyrights, but we're in Mexico. So
yeah,
made them up and sold them, So I've got a bunch of those and pins and such. So yeah, I'm always paying homage every day by wearing this watch. I'm paying homage
absolutely
to Barney and the house that he built us.
Yes. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of those things. I actually have one of those watches as well. I got it from a crew member, and it still has the regular band on it. I wore it a while, and then I was like, I probably should get a new band before I end up losing it. So it just sits on my shelf now. But
it was a dark tan band or a brown band.
A brown band. Yep.
Yeah. And then by Amatron, and the first one kind of went south on me, and I couldn't get it fixed. I'd have to do the innards all over again. But this one has held up since what, 1996?
Yeah.
You got it?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Truly.
That is really awesome. Before I let you go, as you probably know, we have this new version of Barney that's showing up, supposed to be this year, this animated reboot of the show. Do you have any thoughts on that that new iteration or anything regarding that at all?
I don't know much about it. I knew that they were talking about doing something like that, but I haven't been brought into the fold at all. So did you say it's an animation that's going to be done?
Yeah, it's animated. His look is very different than what he ever looked before. It's not confirmed, but we think he's going to be a kid instead of an adult. And there's no real information about what Mattel's doing with it yet. We just have a couple mock-up photos. But there in the fan community, there was some uproar because he's animated and he looks so different. But I think it ties back to what you kind of alluded to before with adults back in the day who just didn't understand what Barney was. And some of our adults now who were kids who are adults now, they don't understand with the new animated one. But I think it's kind of keeps to the same idea that it's just for the kids of the time that it's in.
Oh, you just froze.
Oh,
you went away. Where'd you go? There you are. You froze there. You're back.
Oh, interesting. Sorry about that. But I think we have the kids who grew up with the show like myself now, who some of them aren't too happy with it, but it just ties into what you were saying before that he's just a character that's for kids, not for the adults.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what we always ask different people who worked on the show if they had seen like the animated picture or what their thoughts or hopes are for it. So I just wondered if you had seen anything about it.
I have not, and it very well may be that you, myself, those of us of this age, and of the age that the kids are now, the kids that are now, are purists. And maybe it hits us in the wrong way. So they will find out how successful, and if it's hugely successful, then job done.
Absolutely.
And it's just look. I didn't care for the way they redid Bluto in the Popeye cartoons became Brutus.
Oh yeah,
that's not it. I'm a Curly fan, not a Shemp fan. No, it's got to be Curly. It's good. So we all it's how it hit us initially,
Yeah. So
I guess again, you got to let go, let God,
Absolutely. Well, Barry,
great.
thank you so much for joining me today, sharing your experience. It's been an absolute pleasure. Before we end the podcast, the question I ask everyone every time, just for you specifically, why Barney? Why this character why do you think he's such an important character? Why did it speak to you in the way that allowed you then to go on these tours for 2 years or take the opportunities that you had with the show?
Well, there's a couple of questions in there. I think that, again, the reason for its success, I believe, is because of how it, and I mentioned this before, how it assaulted the sense and assaults the senses of the young kids. And by assault, I don't mean it in battering, hitting. I mean how it impacts,
For
how
sure.
it positively impacts the look, the purple, the large, and then then you got the message. And adults should be aware of that message, that how can it be harmful?
Yes.
The respect and the ethics and the consideration and teaching the alphabet and math and whatever each of the episodes did in that way, similar to Sesame Street.
For sure.
So why judge? For me personally, when I got inside the organization and became aware of what I've just articulated, then that's what I've always lived by. Why knock it? And hey, on a personal level, once again, and forgive me for hitting this point home, I'm sitting in a chair in an office in a house that Barney built. And I am so forever grateful to have done that job, to be able to be in a place economically to be able to afford a home. So it served that purpose in my life. I ain't a millionaire, okay? Believe me, the layperson thinks that everybody that's in the business or been in a film like, no, that ain't how it works. Travolta, on the other hand, bless his heart, he's had that kind of success that makes him one of those superstars. I ain't that, but I still have this to show for it, and I'm blessed and thankful for it. And again, like I say, once inside the organization, I didn't even have to get that far inside of it to see, you know what, I understand why the kids love this. Listen to the music. That also assaults the audio senses, and it's all of that. It's not computer science. It really is. Yes, what you see is what you get, and it works beautifully. Cheryl Leach had a great idea in wanting to teach her young boy, who I believe was on the spectrum, if I'm not mistaken. And how wonderful it was ultimately that I wind up working for 10 years with Joey Travolta. That's one of John's older brothers, who has a company called Inclusion Films, where we teach film arts to the special needs community. So that kind of, awesome. I mean, just this path, what a wonderful path, which follows what the initial Barney idea wrought,
Absolutely.
So, how bad could it be? You know what I'm saying? It's
for sure. Good. For sure. I love that. Thank you so much again. Truly an honor to sit and talk with you. I told you before we started, the fans always love hearing from people, especially like yourself. They love Tinkerputt. He's a beloved character, and we just can't say thank you enough for being a part of our childhoods and being willing to just have a moment to share your story and your experiences.
Well, you're welcome, Karan. Thank you so much for having me. It's been just as much an honor, trust me. And thank you for sharing, as Tinkerputt would say.
Yes, absolutely. Well, history fans, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for tuning in. And who knows, maybe next time we'll see you on your Spout of Love. Take care.